Well, Shabbat Shalom to all of you, both here present at House of David, and those, thank you, brother, I'll take that. And also Shabbat Shalom to those that are joining us online via YouTube or through Facebook. There we go. Today's Torah portion is Chayei, and we begin in chapter number 23. This goes through 25 and verse 18, one of the shorter Torah portions, but it's not for lack of information. In fact, chapter 24 is quite a long chapter, having some 67 verses. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll set that right there. So I have multiple readings I want us to look at today. Let's begin with chapter 23 and read verse 1 and 2. It says, "And Sarah lived 127 years, the years of the life of Sarah." The Hebrew actually reads, she lived 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. It doesn't say 127. Interesting. And it says, Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Now, with last week's Torah portion in mind, that unfortunately we couldn't share with those that are joining us online because we were in a remote location. We talked about behind the scenes and between the lines, how it would seem that Yah reproved Abraham, that he had told him in chapter 17, you're going to have a son through your wife Sarah. But in chapter 18, when Yah shows up and informs Sarah about that, she says, what? Nobody told me that. Why didn't Abraham tell her? And Yah addressed Abraham and said, where is Sarah, your wife? Again, a general reproof. Abraham, get it together. This is the woman that is going to bring forth your heir, not Hagar, not a union between you and this world, but between you and your bride. After the death, or before the death of Sarah, we're going to just call your attention to this in chapter 22, that after Yah has instructed Abraham to take Yitzhak, he says, your only son. Because Abraham's still favoring Ishmael to some degree. For whatever reason. Yah says, no, Yitzhak is your only son. And you're to take him and present him before me as a living korban, a korban chai, a living sacrifice. You're to do this at the place that I'll show you. What's interesting then is that after that has taken place, Yitzhak is replaced by a ram caught by its horns in the thicket. It shows then that Avram, in verse 19, returned to his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba. Abraham's dwelling in Beersheba. Later on, we find that Yitzhak is at Lahai Roi, the well of him who sees. But Sarah is with neither of these men. She's by herself or with her servants at Hebron. Why is Abraham at Beersheba and she's at Hebron? They're not that far apart. but they're dwelling separately. He hears that she's died, and she dies without him. Sad, huh? Chapter 24, first 8 verses. Abraham was old, advanced in years, and Yahweh blessed Abraham in every way. And Abraham said to the oldest servant of his house, who ruled over all that he had, "Please put your hand under my thigh, so that I make you swear by Yahweh, the Elohim of the heavens, and the Elohim of the earth, that you do not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell, but to go to my land and to my relatives and take a wife for my son Yitzhak." The servant said to him, "What if the woman refuses to follow me to this land? Do I take your son back to the land from which you came?" And I can sense that this next verse was said with some sense of sharpness and imperative command. And Abraham said to him, "Beware lest you take my son back there. Yahweh Elohim of the heavens, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my relatives, and who spoke to me and swore to me, saying, 'To your seed I give this land,' he sends his messenger before you, and you shall take a wife from my son from there. And if the woman refuses to follow you, then you shall be released from this oath. Only do not take my son back there." Chapter 25. Again, verse 1. And Abraham took another wife, whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Zokshan, and Medan, Midian, and Yishbak, and Shuach. Yokshan brought forth Shiva and Dedan. And the sons of Dedan were Asherim, and Letushim, and Leumim. The sons of Midian were Ephah, and Epher, and Hanoch, and Abijah, and Eldaah, I guess it is the name. All these were the children of Keturah. Now Abraham gave all that he had to Yitzhak, but of the sons of the concubines whom Abraham had, Abraham gave gifts while he was living, sent them away from his son Yitzhak eastward to the land of the east. Today's thought is, are you in or are you out? In or out of what? The covenant. Are you in or out of the covenant? Yochanan, John chapter 3, verse 16, we all know this verse. "For Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only brought forth son, so that everyone who believes in him should not perish but possess everlasting life." This well-loved and often quoted verse brings great comfort and hope to many sinners. It brings sentimental feelings of past sermons preached to many congregation members. It brings solace and encouragement to family members who have lost someone and they're at a funeral. It is possible, however, that we have quoted this text so many times that we have lost the power and the importance of what's really being said. Notice with me what the text does not say. The text does not say Yah loved the whole world and saved it. It does not say his son died for us, so we're all saved now. Nor does it say all you have to do is believe and it's all done. Nor does it say Yah so loves the world he will never judge it. But that's some of the sentiments at times that have been preached. I'm going to turn this camera here a little bit. No, that's still not the right way. There we go. Well, that doesn't work either. Pardon me, folks, while I try to get this right.
Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom, Donna. Glad you can make it. Those hearing the words, quote, "so loved the world," And everyone who believes may sense and here's an important word, a universal opportunity offered freely to anyone who wants it. However, there are some qualifying words as well. It uses the word Elohim. That is, one must believe that there is a creator, Elohim. If you don't believe that there is a single creator who created the world, then the offer of redemption in John 3:16 really is not offered to you. For those who come to him must believe that he is and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. It says that Elohim gave. The word gave is as a needed answer to the universal problem of sin or fallen mankind. That he did not indiscriminately just give his son as an example, he gave his son as a redeeming offering. And then it says his only begotten or brought forth son. That is, that Yeshua is the only son. There's one sect that says that he and Hasatan are actually brothers. That's not true. Can you believe that?
I haven't heard that one.
He is the only way for us, and he must be seen as the necessary redeemer and restorer. We were cut off, Jeremiah 3:8 says, and divorced. We were cut off and sent away. We had no way back. But Yeshua said, I have come but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He came to make a way back for us. Thank you, Yeshua. I appreciate that. Then it says believes. He who believes in him. The idea of believing, though, is not just a mental agreement, but an active producing of evidence and fruit that you have accepted what is reality and that you are therefore changed. You align yourself with what you say you now believe. In other words, you can't pray a prayer and keep on living as you were living and believe that something is special taking place. There's going to be a change. I love what one writer said. He said, you're not born again until the Holy Spirit says that you're born again. In other words, there's going to be a life-giving spiritual change. The idea that you will perish without this acceptance. That is, that outside of the Son, there is an assured judgment. And finally, it says everlasting life. Well, to accept this promise, there needs to be a belief that there is the Olam Haba. There is life that is yet to come. There's a lot of implications and a lot of assumptions and a lot of realizations that must be accepted before this word has any merit to offer you. Well, I read the verse, I prayed a prayer, I asked him into my heart, and therefore it's all fixed and I'm okay. Because the man up front said so. How many people are trusting in that and they've never experienced a life change? Well, the verse said, so how are we to understand Yah's affection and love for the whole world, which is there, but also then balance that against his willingness to bring judgment upon it? Let me put it this way. Yah will ultimately judge those that he still loves. That's hard for us to understand. As with all things foundational, to understand this, we go to the foundation of all things, the Torah. Specifically, we're going to look at the details of Abraham and Sarah's relationship and their worldviews to understand how it is that Yah can love us and judge us. Is everybody automatically included? Or is everybody excluded except for a select few? Let's look at it this way. Let's grab a marker here. We have the kingdom. I'm going to need to write that somewhere else, so I ain't going to have enough room there, Barry. We have the kingdom. Don't give out on me, marker. Are we looking at complete inclusion? Are we looking at exclusion? Are we looking at those who are guilty of intrusion? Or is it more powerfully infusion?
That's right.
My arrow is backwards. It may take some praying to get this word taught today. Is Yah looking to exclude or include or war against the intruders, or is he looking for the infused ones? So let's,
Making us think. Making us think.
Making us think. Wonderful. Let's think on that and see if we have any thoughts. I got to take my time today because I got to get this right. So we have two thoughts today, just two. Two big thoughts, but just two. Number one, let's talk about universal versus, what words do we want to use? How about the words specific, or maybe we should say the verified. And I got a marker that does not want to write. How did I do that? That's brand new.
Or took the wrong way. Shake it from the top now.
Shake it from the top down. He said.
There you go.
So Abraham stood alone in his belief in one Elohim in all the earth. He believed that there was one Elohim who was the creator of heaven and earth. He lived among polytheists who worshiped the heavens, sun, moon, stars. They also worshiped vain idols that were created from their own wild imaginations. The rabbinical commentators suggest, and I think I can agree with them, that Abraham would situate himself along the major trade routes from Mesopotamia in the north to Mitzrayim in the southwest. That as these two gigantic cultures would trade together, they would by necessity have to move through the land of Eretz Israel. There were highways, one that normally they would call the King's Highways. These were trade routes that the caravans would use. So he would situate himself along this road so that passersby would see then a camp set up and stop in looking for food, for water, maybe for shelter. And while showing hospitality to them from his flocks and his herds and his wealth, that he would have an opportunity then to discuss with them that there are not many gods, but there's one. Have you heard about him? His name is Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. And let me tell you about him, for I have heard his voice, and I have encountered him by some visible means, by which we have never been told what that was. And this is the promise that he made to me. And see, it is already beginning to take place. This opportunity to show hospitality, which was a major cultural expectation of that day, presented the means to share Yahweh with them. Looking at a map of Israel, if you were to look at it, matter of fact, if you have the scriptures, it's in the back. You turn all the way to the very last map. It says tribal allotments. If you'll turn one page back, you'll see events in the Tanakh. You see that? Now, if you look about middle ways of the way down along this gray strip in the middle of this map, which is the Jordan River Valley, to your left, you will see Shechem. Do you see that? Follow that just a little bit southwest, and you will see the two positions of Bethel and Ai. Do you see those? Continue then just a little bit further down around to where it says Salt Sea. Look to your left, and there is the city of Hebron, which is also the same location as the terebinth tree of Mamre, and it's also known as Kiryat Arba. And then if you will continue a little further southwest, you will see Beersheba. Does everyone follow me on that? Almost a straight line. Not exactly, but certainly as you start at this northern point of Elan Moreh and Shechem, because Elan Moreh is a mountain top that sits in a position to look over the valley that contains Shechem, or Shechem, as we would say. And on the opposite side of that valley, to your right is Mount Ebal, the Mount of Cursing, and to your left is the Mount of Blessing, Mount Gerizim. So all of these points connect. In Bereshit chapter 12 is the first city that is mentioned, Elan Moreh and Shechem. There Yah appeared to him, and he built an altar. He then moved down between Bethel and Ai, and he built another altar. Then we read about Kiryat Arba, or the terebinth tree of Mamre. Mamre is an Amorite individual, and this is his terebinth tree. Why does he camp out near a tree? Because it would provide shade for passersby. And where there's tree with roots, likely there is water. It's also known as Hebron. It's all the same location. And finally, we will find Abraham at Beersheba, the well of the seven, or the well of the oath of the seven. So is this the trade route? It very well could be that is a trade route. I would have to dig further to find that out. Didn't have time this week to do that. But my thought is that that's possibly a trade route. So Abraham was told, leave your family and come to this land. And he did so. He left Lakah, he left and went out for himself. But Yah says, leave all your family. He didn't do that. He brought Lot with him. Lot is the nephew of Abraham, the son of his brother Haran. In Bereshit 14, verse 13, Abraham is now living at Hebron, the terebinth tree of Mamre the Amorite. And the scripture says he is the brother of Eshcol and the brother of Aner, and they had a covenant with Abraham. What kind of covenant did they have? We're not told. Did he bring them into covenant that he was in? Were they converts? Or were they did they have a trade covenant? Or a peace covenant? We're not told. In Bereshit 23, verse 3, when he is trying to find a place to bury Sarah, his wife, it says that he speaks to the son of Het. These are Hittites. And he's asking for a burial spot for his wife, and they say to him that he is a prince of Elohim among us. They know who Elohim is. And they recognize the relationship that Abraham has with Elohim. And they give honor and deference to him, saying, any place you want, we will give it to you. You choose from whatever we have, it's yours. They're recognizing he's a man worthy of honor. From Chabad.org, the Kehot commentary, it says this, and I quote, Abraham was undoubtedly the trailblazer in disseminating the awareness of God in the world, as we have seen. But in order to spread the message of monotheism, morality, and justice to an idolatrous, immoral, and unjust world, he had to focus persistently on chesed, loving kindness, the primary attribute defining God's relationship with the world, giving endlessly and indiscriminately, accepting everyone with unqualified love, seeing them as the best they can be, regardless of who they are now. That is the spirit of Yochanan 3:16. Yah gave with the opportunity that those that were wayward from him could have a righteous, restored relationship with him, if they would choose to believe to do so. Now, we've studied about this, again, the strained relationship that Abraham evidently had with Sarah, calling her his sister when it was convenient, taking Hagar, who ended up being a competitor with his own wife, and about Yah's reproof of him for failing to recognize Sarah appropriately and failing to inform her about his promise to her about having a son. Now let's look at Bereshit chapter 17. And again, I'm not trying to preach today. This is a teaching, and you're welcome to ask questions along the way if you have. Yes, ma'am.
When did Abraham start to take on concubines, plural? Any idea?
We're not told about any other than Hagar and Keturah. It could be that Keturah, the rabbis think that Keturah and Hagar is one and the same.
But
I don't know that I agree with that necessarily. I mean, it's possible, but I kind of lean toward the idea that they're two separate individuals. But the concubine Hagar had a son, Ishmael. Keturah had 6 sons. So Ishmael and the 6 sons of Keturah, the sons of the concubines, plural, he sent away.
did Hagar become a wife? Kind of a secondary wife?
She was a concubine, a secondary wife. There can be one primary bride who has the Keturah, that is Sarah. Hagar acted as a concubine, which is a legal wife without first wife rights. It's a bit different. Sam?
I'm still thinking about when you said something about Yahweh appearing to Abraham or Abram in the early stages. I'm thinking, did he have any more evidence of a creator, the one Elohim of the universe? Did he have any more than we have today? Did he have any more to go on than we have today?
Well, he actually heard Yah's voice,
Yeah.
and he had a vision of something. We're not told. I do not believe that Yah appeared to him visibly and showed him what he said to Moshe he could not see. But there was some revelation of something. And then at the covenant between the pieces, he saw the oven and the torch moving up and down. So he had visions And he heard Yah's voice on a, I won't say regular, but a somewhat frequent opportunity.
He had continual things to hear that he was on the right path. Promises. Keep being reminded that his seed's going to be, so numerous you couldn't count. That's, I guess the speaking is a big issue for him, and so I guess I'm comparing it to how we are today. Are we any less assured of the one that we're following?
We have the advantage point that we have the recorded history and we've seen the results that he himself never saw. Hebrews says that these and the prophets looked forward to our day and they rejoiced in the spirit when they saw it. So yes, we have some advantage.
We, sometimes think that they saw the greater miracles that we don't see today, especially the children of Israel coming out of this reign. And, we wonder how could they go south and, turn bad with unbelief after all that they saw.
Yeah. Legitimate question.
But,
all right. In chapter 17, begin with verse 15. And Elohim said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, do not call her name Sarai, but call her, for Sarah is her name. And I shall bless her and also give you a son by her. And I shall bless her and she shall become nations. Sovereigns of people are from her. And Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, as a child born to a man who is 100 years old, or Sarah who is 90 years old, to bear a child? Abraham said to Elohim, oh, let Ishmael live before you. He's still promoting the cause of Ishmael. And Elohim said, now let's do that again. Elohim said, no. Let Ishmael live before you. He said, no. That's not the way I'm going to do it, Abraham. I'm going to take the impossibility of you and Sarah being capable of bearing children and turn that around, and the miraculous birth of your son is going to produce your heir. It's not Ishmael. And I can almost hear him saying to him, get over it. I'm not choosing him. It is when Yitzhak is born that Sarah, who has been partnering with her husband, call me your brother, say that you're my sister. Okay. She went along with that twice. Sarah, we're moving from where we are to a land that is unknown. Here she goes. Okay. I'm willing to follow you. We're going to live in tents for the rest of our lives. Well, okay. And she follows him. He hears Yah's voice. She does not. He comes and says, this is what Yah says. Okay. Abraham runs to her and says, hurry up, get some measures, 3 measures of fine meal and make cakes real quick. Okay. Do you hear this heart of this woman? She sees my role is to partner with my husband and get this commission of Yah, the creator of heaven and earth, done. And I'm trusting that my husband is hearing from Yah and getting these instructions, and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. She says, evidently the covenant's not through me. I will give you this fertile myrtle of Hagar, the Egyptian, and maybe she's been given to us in order to help us to have a son. She finally rises up. Hang in there with me, Cheryl, and pray.
No, it's perfect though.
Well, I see that there's more to the story than what you just casually read the page. There's some emotions. There's some real people involved here who have real life issues. And I believe every one of you ladies here present, you can see what I'm describing to you. Hagar cops an attitude, and she's looking at Sarah like, look at me, I'm pregnant, and you never will be. Because you can't, and I can.
Oh, that would never happen.
She's just a little catty.
You think?
And Sarah says, get her out of here. And here she comes back. As I said last week, the messenger told me in the middle of the wilderness to come back and submit to you. What do you want me to do? She's broken for a little while. Ishmael's born, and Sarah is watching her husband dote all over this son of a foreign woman. And every time she sees him, she's realizing, I'm not raising him. Hagar and Abraham are. But she's going along with it because of this universal understanding that Yah is trying to reach the world through the message that there is one Elohim, the maker of heaven and earth, and that he has given to us a covenant to be included with him. And Abraham is trying to share this and include everybody, giving everybody this wonderful benefit of a doubt, trying to include them and make them a part of this. She sees this universal call. But when Yitzhak is born, she starts moving away from this Yah loves everybody and everybody's included mindset to discerning that there may be requirements and particulars for being a part of the covenant. Chapter number 18. Is it chapter 18? No, excuse me. Chapter 21, excuse me. I apologize. Bereshit 21. Look at verse 9 through 12. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Mitzrayim, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. What is he mocking? He is mocking Yitzhak when he has been weaned. He's a young child now. Weaned does not just mean that he is no longer nursing from his mom, but he's being taken from the custodial care of his mom and entrusted to the oversight of his father, who is now going to change the roles of his development. He may be some 4 or 5 years old at this point. And Ishmael, for whatever reason, is mocking, and the word in the Hebrew suggests some things more lewdly than we will discuss. So she said to Abraham, drive out this female servant and her son, for the son of this female servant shall not inherit with my son with Yitzhak. It's not universal, Abraham. The mockers of the covenant are not to be included in the covenant. There's some lines that have to be drawn. And it says, and the matter was very evil in the eyes of Abraham because of his son. Because not of his son Yitzhak, he's defending Ishmael, the mocker. But Elohim said to Abraham, let it not be evil in your eyes because of the boy and because of your female servant. Listen, whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to herd boys, for in Yitzhak your seed is called. The lines are finally, clearly drawn, and the change that comes to the call of the covenant is through the wisdom and the insight that Yah gives to Sarah. And Abraham is reluctant to hear it because in his mind, everybody ought to be included and given the chance. And Sarah is saying no. Not everybody. Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, Yeshua said, not everyone who says to me, Master, Master, shall enter into the reign of the heavens, but he who is doing the desire of my Father in the heavens. Not everybody gets in, not even those who know the name of Yeshua. Now, there are going to be some folks perhaps online that's going to go, oh, blasphemy, heresy, can't. Sarah said it, and Yah says, listen to her. She's right. Send that boy and his mama out of here. Why? Because he will mock the covenant and still compete with Yitzhak to get the benefits of it for what he don't even believe in. And that's still going on to this day.
Right, absolutely.
Read your Middle East news and headlines. Yaakov chapter 2, verse 19 and 20, James. You believe the Elohim is one, you do well. The demons also believe and shudder. But do you wish to know, O foolish man, that belief without works is dead? It's not enough to say that you believe in the covenant. You've got to do the works of the covenant.
That's right.
Yeshua said to the crowd that gathered around him, if you were Abraham's children, you would do what Abraham did. So you can't claim just a bloodline or a lineage or claim to have the belief of Abraham if you're not doing what he did. Matthew chapter 3, verse 7 and 9. Yochanan, John the immerser, is saying, and seeing many of the Pharisees and Sadducees coming to his immersion, he said to them, brood of adders, a bunch of snakes, who has warned you to flee from the coming wrath? There is a consensus that there is judgment coming. He says, who's warned you to get ready for it? Bear therefore fruits worthy of repentance, and do not think that you can say to yourselves, we have Abraham as father. For I say to you that Elohim is able to raise up children to Abraham from these stones. You're not PCs, privileged characters. You remember that from grade school? So Sarah rightly discerned the need for separation, adhering to being a specific people set apart from the rest of the world. It's not that the rest of the world can't be included, but if you're going to be included in this covenant, the covenant requires that you become set apart to the Most High. You cannot join into the covenant and live as you used to live outside the covenant. Yah says, no. But he so loved the world that he gave his son for us. And if he gave his son for us, he meant to include all of us. Yes, if you believe.
That's right.
And believing is not mentally agreeing or feeling sorry about what you've done and hoping and promising that you will someday do better.
Somebody should teach them that word believe. And
Yeah.
expand it and include everything that belongs with it. You know, and what it's more than just mental sin, of course, we know that, but everything that belongs with the word believe. What he meant when he said that.
Sam, when you put that teaching together, I will help you to put it online.
Okay.
There's also Teshuvah.
turning away from
and turning to.
and turning to.
Yes.
If you just turn away, but you don't turn to, you've only done half of it.
Sarah rightly discerned, and this is what we need to learn from her, that while we're to be involved in this present world, we're not to be hermits and shy away from any involvement in life. It is the role of being light to their darkness, hope in their despair, and a means of introducing them to the Redeemer. We are not equal with the world. We're not even in balance with the world, because the world is out of balance with us. And we do not share in its destiny. We are people of the covenant and of the kingdom that the covenant declares. We live by the commands and the teachings of the Torah. We do so willingly, out of love and devotion to our redeeming, restoring Messiah. Yochanan, or John chapter 17, verse 14 through 18, this is what Yeshua prayed. I have given them your word, and the world hated them because they are not of the world as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world. There is no great escape to where we get out of the world, because this is where we belong. No one said amen to that, but that's the truth.
Amen.
I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but here's the other side of it, that you keep them from the wicked one. They are not of the world as I am not of the world. Set them apart in your truth. Your word is truth. Then he said, as you sent me into the world to gather those that would, I also send them into the world to gather those that would. Returning to the Quixote commentary. Now, I love this. I love that commentary. It says, quote, Abraham initiated the process by reviving the world's awareness of God. And I'm using their terminology. Sarah ensured the continuation of this process by defining the parameters of the relationship between Abraham's heirs and the world they were charged to mentor. His goal, tell everybody. Her goal, define the boundaries. The lesson of Parashat Chayei Sarah then is that universalism must operate hand in hand with particularism. Particularism, or as we have written up here, being specific or verified. We are all Abrahams, charged with the mission of spreading the divine consciousness, he says, to the whole world. And as such, we must strive to view humanity in the best possible light, and each individual as a precious child of God who deserves unconditional love and the best we can give, both materially and spiritually. But we must also be Sarahs, cherishing the integrity of the bearers of the divine message and acutely aware of the fact that Yah has entrusted this message to us, that we bear the message and that the world is our audience. We are his servants. Say the message, but understand it's covenant relationship that we're offering, not a feel-good party.
That's right.
And Ali, Ali, everyone home free. That's not the message of Yah. So Abraham followed Sarah's understanding in sending Ishmael away as he was a marker of the covenant and the covenant's heir. And then, as we will see, as we read in chapter 25 and verse 5, or 5 and 6, he gave all that he had to Yitzhak, and then with the sons of the concubines, he blessed them. And what did he do? He separated them from the heir. Why? So they could not compete with the heir for the inheritance of the heir. Chapter 25 and verse 10 is a very telling verse. Look at that. Chapter 25 and verse 10. At the end of the verse, it says, there Abraham was buried with Sarah. What is it? Listen, his wife. In the end, they were joined together, and it is a syncretizing of the two views of the mission of Yah. He wasn't buried with Hagar or Keturah, but Sarah, his wife. Actually, he was buried in the cave that he secured for both of them. That's point one. Any thoughts or other questions on point one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of connecting to the question I asked earlier. So even after Sarah died and he remarried, the remarried wife is still considered a concubine?
Was Keturah a new primary bride? I don't think so. I think he probably took her as a concubine.
First, before you took her as, explain that.
A concubine is a wife.
Yeah.
Now, in our culture, we don't understand that. We don't get that. But she is a wife. She is a legal wife. She just does not have primary bride rights.
So only the very first bride can do that, even if they're dead.
If he had taken her as a primary bride, then those 6 sons would have stood to compete legally with Yitzhak as the heir.
I think it's all about the firstborn son and,
Period.
well, I mean, but God moved Ishmael out of the first place and put Isaac there.
Because he wasn't the son of the promise.
Well, let's follow that reasoning and look at something here that I found very interesting. Well, these markers are just not going to write real dark. We have, in the first 11 chapters, we have a lineage. We have Adam. We go through 10 generations where we arrive then at Noah. Noah then has 3 sons. He has Shem, Ham, and Yepeth. Through Shem, we then have the sons of Noah, or his generation, which results then in 70 nations. Actually, it goes through all of these sons. There are 70 nations that are determined. What's interesting is that there is a prophecy that from Ham, there is a cursed lineage through Canaan. But he says of Yepeth that he will be found in the tents of Shem. What are the tents of Shem? They are the tents of Torah learning. Eventually, Yepeth, who basically moved and migrated through his descendants into Europe would return and come back to Shem, who is the Semitic race. Hello. Then it gets interesting that from Shem, we have 10 generations where we then get to Terah, who has 3 sons. He has a son named Avram, Haran. Is that right? No, yeah, Haran and Nahor. It is at Haran that we get Lot. Lot, like the son of Ham, ends up in a cursed situation, bearing sons through incest. From Avram, Ishmael, he is rejected. But it is Yitzhak that is taken. And then in Yitzhak, it is Esau, who likewise is rejected. As we see next week, guess who partners together? The rejects. But it is Yaakov that is taken. And from Yaakov, just like there are 70 nations, there are 70 souls that end up going down to Mitzrayim. An interesting parallel of how these groups move through the same order. It also gives us an understanding that if this pattern is to be followed, Lot will end up being rejected as Canaan was rejected from him. But Nahor will need to find a way to be rejoined with Abraham. How is that going to happen? I'm glad you asked. Oh, Father, help me here today. There we go. All right. Nahor's offspring are Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And they will return to dwell in the tent of the children of Abraham, just like Japheth returned to dwell in the tents of Shem. So when Abraham seeks a wife for his son Yitzhak, he seeks to include his idea of universalism, those outside the covenant, but also employs the ideals of Sarah as the bride may come from an outside group that are not a part of the covenant, but she must be willing to accept the parameters of the covenant. So in chapter 24, verse 1 through 6, as we have read, he says, "Do not take a wife for my son from among the Keniani, the cursed lineage of Ham. They are idolatrous, they are perverted, they are pagans. Do not take a wife for him from here." But what does he say? He says, "Go back to the land that I came from and take a wife from my relatives who live there." Who's living there? Nahor, his brother and his brother's family. So Yitzhak and Yitzhak's son Yaakov both marry into Nahor's lineage, redeeming and drawing out and crossing over and bringing them into covenant relationship. Anyone who wants to. It's interesting that as that attempt is made, there are those that try to milk that situation for their own financial gain and personal benefit more than being blessed by the covenant. They're the ones who say, but what's in it for me? There's a difference between the bride's attitude and the bride's family's attitude. What Abraham demands adherence to is that the daughters of the Canaanites who live by it is to be rejected. But then let's look at Yochanan chapter 3, verse 18 through 20. This follows where we started out with John 3:16. And I'm trying not to dance around so much that I lose you. I hope you're following where I'm going with this. John chapter 3, verse 18 through 20. He who believes in him is not judged, but he who does not believe is judged already, because he has not believed in the name of the only brought forth Son of Elohim. And this is the judgment, that the light is come into the world, and men loved their darkness rather than the light, for their works were wicked. Everyone who is practicing evil matters hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. I'll take the benefits of the covenant. You say that if I follow these steps that you're preaching about on Sunday morning, that my business will succeed, that my family will get along better, that I will have a better outlook on life, that everything will be well with me, that I will have peace, that my marriage will be resolved, that all of my problems will go away. Okay. I will employ the feel-good steps that you're talking about from your philosophical, psychological viewpoints that you say you gathered from the good book. That the man upstairs actually loves me enough to try to help me. And that's the fluff and puff gospel light that is preached in so many places. If you don't believe me, try it. Go somewhere on a Sunday morning or look at it, what's on TV on Sunday mornings or during the week, and listen to what they say. Gospel light. It's very, very few that are saying you must be born again and you must live uprightly and be filled with the Ruach HaKodesh and walk according to the Word.
That's right.
And stop your sinning and start living righteously.
That's right.
There's very few that are saying you cannot live together outside the bounds of marriage and be acceptable in the eyes of the Messiah. Well, Dad, no. It's just common now that people move in together and live together for a while before they get married. That's just the way it's done now. It may be the way it's done, but it doesn't make it righteous. I've always wondered. So you've lived with someone now for a number of years, and now you want to come to an altar before God, in your opinion, and make this union righteous and make covenant declarations to one another. Why bother? You're already doing what you say you want to do. But now you want his blessing on your already established union. No, you cannot live in homosexuality and in perversions. And because you come to a building and sit on its soft padded seats on Sunday morning and listen to the choir sing and feel good and even shed tears, that does not make you righteous.
That's right.
But what is the world teaching right now in many pulpits? Everybody come. We all love you. God understands. He's not rejecting anybody. He's including everybody. Everybody come in. And Yah says you're not being included. You're intruding.
Wow.
You're intruding in my covenant. I want to infuse you with my covenant and change you The kingdom of heaven suffers violence. There are those that are warring against the kingdom of heaven to take it by force. You will be forced to accept us. And God says, like I said with Ishmael, no. You're being mean. No, I'm calling for righteousness.
Yes.
Not everybody who says Yeshua gets in.
That's right.
He says, I never knew you.
Yes.
The story of Abraham sending his nameless servant who speaks the words of the Father to those in the world and testifies of the Father's Son. See the parallel? The Ruach HaKodesh does not testify of himself or proclaim himself.
No, it doesn't.
Actually, you could say herself, but that's another teaching. But comes declaring the words, inscribing the word of the Father upon our hearts, and testifies about the Son, who is the heir. He finds the bride for the Son among them and seeks to bring her home. The bride, hearing the word of the Father and desiring to become one or echad with the Son, leaves this present world and comes to the land to join her husband and build his family or his kingdom with him. That's what the Torah is showing us. The story of salvation is in the Torah.
Yes.
The Redeemer is revealed in the Torah.
Right. Yes.
Rivka is from this present world, which is materialistic and greedy and indulgent and idolatrous. They're aware of Abraham and they know about Yah, but they live in a mere form of righteousness, remaining outside the covenant by choice. If you're outside the covenant, you don't have to obey the covenant. But if you at least know about Yah and believe that he exists, well, that ought to count for something. And maybe he will judge me with a curve on the big day. Yitzhak has been raised to walk in covenant, to know Yah, and he himself is a living sacrifice. He is one that has been placed on the altar, even unto death, and Yah gave him a substitute. Their union is the joining together of the spiritual realm and the physical realm to produce a righteous lineage. But Abraham was one who showed kindness and servanthood. Think about this. He let Lot choose before he took whatever remained left over. He chose to rescue Lot when he got in trouble and interceded for him even when he's facing dire judgment. He ran to meet the men that appeared at his tent door and offered kindness and hospitality to them. His servant then sought for a bride who had the same characteristics of Abraham, looking for one who would serve willingly and with kindness. What did he say? Let her be willing to give me a drink of water and then offer to draw water for my camels as well. How many camels did he take with him? 10. Anytime you see the number 10, look and see if it possibly has something to do with the house of Israel. Here we have a picture of the house of Israel moving with the Ruach HaKodesh and coming to the well where the bride is found and kneeling down in humility that the bride may be revealed. And then they rise up and take the bride and bring her back to the land of the covenant where she can be joined with the type of the Messiah. That's our job. The bride who seeks to leave this present world and join the covenant of redemption offered to Abraham and find the Messiah who redeems and restores and crushes the serpent's head, delivering mankind from the curse, she receives the blessing of the promise that is found in the covenant. Well, let the girl stay with us and y'all hang out for 10 days at least. And let's have some partying. And he says, don't delay me. Don't hinder the Ruach HaKodesh from presenting the bride. They said, well, let's ask the girl and see if she's willing to go. She said, I'll go. And they left. She did not delay in leaving this present world. Once she heard about the Son, once she heard about the covenant, she said, I choose him over all that is known to me. Yeshua says, if you love your father and your mother and your sister and your brother more than me, you're not worthy of me. She said, I do not choose them. I choose you, and I'm coming home to you. Now let's compare two sets of scriptures. Let's look at chapter 22, verse 17. Bereshit, chapter 22, verse 17. Yah says to Abram, I shall certainly bless you and shall certainly increase your seed as the stars of the heaven, as the sand which is on the seashore. Listen to this last line, and let your seed possess the gates of their enemies. That's what was said to Abraham. Chapter 24, verse number 60. This is what Rivka's family said to her. And they blessed Rivka and said to her, let our sister become the mother of thousands of 10,000s, and let your seed possess the gates of those who hate you. Those who number as the sand that is on the seashore, and those who are thousands of 10,000s. 1,000, 10,000 is 10 million. But it's in the plural form. Thousands of 10,000s. How many millions is that? Probably about the same number as the sand that is on the seashore. An innumerable host, and both are asked to receive possession of the gates of those who are their enemies or that hate them. So this innumerable host is to possess the gates of our enemy. The accuser of the brothers, the liar from the beginning, the dragon, the serpent who lied in the garden and who stole the possessions of man. Gates is a place of authority. It's a place of jurisprudence. It is a place where legalities and legal actions take place. The authorities of darkness seek to exercise legal control over the people of the covenant because they hate us. Why? Because we do not include them without righteousness. While mobs from the street have their way and liars in the press seek to deceive, it is the legal authority of governments that gives sanction to these actions against those who have the face of Yah. So the world and its leaders and governments are in cahoots together, as Psalms chapter 2 describes. But here's the positive. In Matthew 16, verse 18 and 19, Yeshua said, on this rock, on the declaration that Yeshua being the Messiah, the Ben Elohim who lives, I shall build my kahal, my assembly, and the gates, the authorities, the legal bodies of Sheol shall not overcome it. What is he saying? The promise made to Rivka and the promise made to Abraham, the one and the same promise, come to pass through me. And I shall give you the keys of the reign of the heavens, and whatever you bind on earth shall be having been bound in the heavens, and whatever you loose in the earth shall be having been loosened in the heavens. Binding and loosing is legal decrees. Whatever you bind and loose, it will be, because it's already been bound and loosed in the heavens. He's not saying that we can say whatever it will and it'll be bound and loose. He is saying when we agree with what's heaven's already declared, bound and loose, clean and unclean, righteous and unrighteous, light and dark, covenant and outside of covenant, when you declare that, I will agree with you and enforce it in the earth. Because I'm giving you authority in the earth, even in the gates where the enemy is working against you. So don't fear them, because they don't prevail.
Come on now. That's right.
We win.
That's right.
Kick that field goal
Yeah.
and the extra point, because we win. So we've not been redeemed and brought into this covenant to fail or to be destroyed, but to overcome
Yes.
and to prevail.
Yes.
We have been included. Thank you, Abraham. But we understand the boundaries. Thank you, Sarah.
Yes.
You both have taught your children well.
Mm.
That's all there is to it.
All right, that's great. It's so full of knowledge and understanding and clarity of that, what we, I don't want to call that the Old Testament, but our history.
Our history.
Is being lived out today through Yeshua. It's a great understanding.
Anyone got questions? Miss Shirley.
Yeah, it's kind of a big rabbit trail. So I struggle a little bit with the covenant, because God made a covenant with Abraham and his seed before Isaac was even born.
Mm-hmm.
And the covenant, the sign of the covenant is the circumcision, and he circumcised Ishmael. And he said, this is an everlasting covenant that I will give to your descendants, the land that I promised you. So then my question is, unless they do not get circumcised, it seems that the only way that that covenant is broken is through not being circumcised. So as long as the descendants of Ishmael keep the circumcision covenant, there's still some kind of covenant with them, because they're still the seed of Abraham, and God promised that he would have a covenant with his descendants. Unless the seed in all of those, I think I would have to do a study on that, but is the seed singular or plural? I'm assuming it's plural in all of his seed, because he said, I will bless Ishmael, and he will be,
Okay.
I mean, is that where the conflict with the land is coming from? It's because there is this promise to all of them to have the land, but the everlasting covenant for all the world comes through Ishmael. I don't know. I'm not convinced that, I'm not there yet, that there isn't something with Ishmael and his descendants.
Okay. I was thinking about this morning. The sons of Lot. Lot was circumcised, being in the house of Abraham when circumcision was given, or Abraham. Ammon and Moab and Edom. Esau would have been circumcised. And the delineation of the land and the sharing of the land, Yah says this territory belongs to Moab, this to Ammon, this to Edom, and you're not getting an inch of it. Why? Because of their connection to Abraham, he gave them what was due them, something. Now, that does not mean that they did not rise up against Israel throughout the histories of Kings and first of Samuel and the prophets. They did. But Israel was not permitted to go over and conquer their land. They were allowed to defend themselves, but not go over and take their land. Ishmael comes back with Yitzhak and buries Avram or Abraham together. There is a redeemable quality available in him. But it's the same requirement for him as it even is for the descendants of Yitzhak and Yaakov. You must reject the idols and the gods of this present world and cling only to Yah. So even if we are descendants directly from Yaakov, there's no guarantee. We may have been circumcised. There is no guarantee unless we live as one circumcised. To the Galatians, Rosh Shaul wrote, and he used the term akrobustia to describe a certain element of them. And the term, it means to, basically it means that they threw away their circumcision. They undid their circumcision by throwing it away. So there was a need then that they be almost re-circumcised to some understanding. Circumcising the heart here. You can be cut on in the flesh, but not cut in your heart. And the flesh mark means nothing, right? So I agree with you that there is an availability of something for Ishmael, and he is partnered with Edom. If you follow the rabbinical mind, Edom becomes Rome, from which we get the Roman Catholic Church and all of its offspring, even in Protestantism. It's interesting how that the popes over the last several terms, whoever they may have been, make inroads with the leadership of imams and so forth with the Arabs. And from that we get Chrislam, which is a syncretism of Islam and Christianity. Some prominent quote unquote Christian pastors promoting Chrislam in their churches. You think, what are you doing? Well, we need to get over it and just understand that the God of Christianity and the God of Islam are one and the same. We just call them by different names. Read the Quran just a little bit, and you will find that that's an impossibility. I don't advise of reading the Quran. Just understand that they call anyone who is not full-fledged adherent to Islam is an infidel and worthy of death. After 9/11, they stood up and said, we believe in Jesus, just like you do. They do. They believe that Jesus is subservient to Muhammad, that he will get married when he returns to the earth. He will bring all of the Christians over to Islam. He will be a great warrior who will be killed in battle. And that's it. But he will be subservient to Muhammad and to their God. It's a different Messiah that they're preaching. Guess how many people got fooled by that and jumped in and said, wow, we've been warring against these people unnecessarily. They believe like we do. No, they don't. No, they don't. Can Ishmael turn from that?
Yeah.
Can we turn from our vain religions? So I agree with you. There is a redeeming quality available in Ishmael, just like it is for the rest of us. But we have to turn from the darkness and walk in the light, which is the covenant.
Yeah, just because you're circumcised does not mean you're the covenant. It's a sign of the covenant if you have it. So it's But if you don't have the faith of Abraham, the belief of Abraham, to live as he lived, and, you know, you can circumcise all you want, that's not gonna get you in.
And also to answer your question, Sean, about the seed, I believe it's both singular and plural. Plural in he said, I will make your descendants like the heaven, stars of the heavens, sand of the seashore. That's obviously plural. But I mean, simultaneously, a double meaning here is seed with a capital S, the one that was prophesied in Bereshit 3:15, that would come and be the deliverer, the redeemer, that would crush the serpent's head. He is the heir of the covenant, the ultimate heir of the covenant that you and I are joined to and are joint heirs with him, as Rob should have said. So it's a double play on the same word. Any other questions or thoughts? I know I took you all over the map today. We even looked at a map, drew charts and all kinds of stuff. But I hope we get the message today.
Amen.
All right, let's stand together.
If you didn't get it, you can watch it again.
Some people have to do that.
I left the bathroom and I missed a bunch of it.
Thank y'all for being here today. And thank y'all for joining us online. I appreciate it very much. Get under the shawl with my Sarah, primary bride. Let me, my only bride as well. You better keep it that way, she said. Will you receive his blessing? Yivarekaka Yahweh vayishmareka. Ya'er Yahweh panav ileka v'yikuneka. Isa Yahweh panav ileka v'yasim leka shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you that he may grant unto you shalom. Once more, let's look toward Jerusalem. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed are you, Yah, our God, King of this universe, who has brought forth bread from the earth. In the name of your Son, Yeshua HaMashiach, who is our bread of life, we give you thanks and praise. Amen.
Amen.
Don't erase the board yet.
She wants a picture.
So what's the picture of the board?
Speaks 1,000 words.
Don't erase it.
Let's go, kid.